Welcome back to Law and Crime. I'm Carissa Kranz, and I will be here with you for the next few hours. We are live in the Jessica Chambers trial. So for those of you just joining us, that's the live feed in the courtroom right now. This is the story that is gripping the nation of the young Mississippi teen that went missing. The defendant is now on trial for a second time. Right now, we have on the stand a speech pathologist, and with me, Linda Kenney Baden. Good morning. Right now, good afternoon. It's noon here, right? So we are authenticating the witness, and this witness is now considered an expert by the judge in speech pathology. This is a prosecution witness. What do you think the prosecution is getting at here by bringing this witness to the stand?
Well, I don't think she's an expert yet, because I think the defense still has to cross-examine her on her credentials, but they're going to try to say that cognitively Jessica Chambers was just too damaged to understand what was being asked of her, and physically, because of all the burns, she couldn't get the words out correctly, even if she thought she was saying the words she wanted to say. That's it.
Right. And so the media has said, and there's all sorts of Oxygen as a special on this, etc., that it seems to be that she said or uttered the word Eric.
Or Derek.
Right. So we'll see what happens. Let's go live back into the courtroom to see what this witness has to say this time around. Let's take a look. Welcome back. I'm Carissa Kranz. We have a live feed in the Jessica Chambers trial, and right now you are listening to the speech pathologist on the stand. She's an expert, and she is testifying for the prosecution about the vocal cords, the larynx, what it takes to actually utter a word or have a breath under circumstances of distress like Jessica Chambers was in the final moments of her life. With me, Linda Kenney Baden. Let's talk about this before they're on a sidebar.
Right.
So we will keep a close eye on the courtroom. We will go directly back to court as soon as they have something to report. But let's talk about this witness for a minute. And why is it important? You know, she's saying for the prosecution to lend a certain credibility on what may or may not have been said in Jessica Chambers' final moments. But isn't it possible, is this what the defense is going to say, that, you know, we don't really know the time frame of when those vocal cords were damaged and at what point things were burned?
And if they were even, the vocal cords were even damaged, Carissa, that's the interesting, because she said she can't really do the medical testimony. I mean, I have questions already.
That's good. Your husband is a medical examiner, right? So that's where your mind would go.
But my first mind would go, I mean, I want to say, okay, doctor, how much air does she need to say Eric? How much, not even closing my lips to make the R. Right. How much air does she need to say Eric? How much air does she need to say help me, help me, help me? Could she close her lips with the help me? It's a P, isn't it? So because we have that testimony. We have the testimony that from the first trial. So if I'm the defense attorney, I'm going right after that, because she can't medically say at that specific time there wasn't enough air in her lungs at that time to make a few words or say a few words.
So. Okay, I just got word that we have some more going on in court. So let's go back to the courtroom, and we'll be back to discuss this some more in a bit. Welcome back. That is a live feed in the Jessica Chambers trial, and I'm here with Linda Kenney Baden, and we have a few minutes while they switch witnesses to discuss this witness. I know when the defense was testifying or cross-examining her testimony, rather, you said, is that it? Is that it? Can I get out there? You were ready to jump out of the screen, take this earpiece out, take your mic out, and go stand there and cross-examine her yourself.
I was going to Mississippi.
You were going Mississippi. You were going rogue Mississippi. What would you have done differently? Like, what would you have asked to really take? Because I agree with you. I think we lost the continuity of his cross-examination because he had so many breaks, because he did have to go to defense counsel, and then he came back with additional questions. And you do sort of lose the momentum of the aha, gotcha moment.
Right.
How would you have handled that?
All right. And now I'm not commenting on whether Tellers is guilty or not. I'm just telling you as a defense attorney how I would have crossed her a little differently. First of all, there was a moment there she said, can I have a minute to ask my attorney a question? Now, she's talking about the prosecutor, right? So you want to get into her bias at that point. She believes that's her attorney.
I know.
You know, and so that's key.
The prosecution attorney is not anyone's attorney.
It's not anyone's attorney. It's supposed to be for justice. So we have those. I mean, how much air was in her lung? How much air, Ms. Speech Pathologist, did Jessica need at the time the EMS found her to say the word Eric or Eric? How much air did she need in her lung at that time?
And also,
she won't be able to tell you.
And also key is she didn't have her notes with her, and she admitted she wasn't a medical examiner. Didn't really examine the body. So
and the vocal cords apparently weren't damaged on her. And so you want to know, is the lung starting to tighten where she couldn't get air? Could she say, are you telling me she could not say that she didn't say help me, help me, help me? and I would then show her the tape of the first trial. She had tapes of the first trial. She reviewed tapes.
Well, and also one thing that's interesting is help me, Eric. All these things could be one consonant.
Alec, we talked about it.
Help.
Yep.
Help
me. Right.
Me. It's that's not. You're not saying Carissa, Linda Kenney Baden.
And the adrenaline with the first few minutes of being feeling like you've got your EMS, you've got your help, and then things started happening. So there was a lot to go in here that was not going in. Also, but she was coherent. She knew her name, right? She gave the race, from my understanding, from reading the first trial. Now, whether there's going to be evidence in the second trial, we don't know. The race of the person who attacked her. What he was. So she was coherent. She could also walk. She walked. Her arms were like a zombie, but she was walking. So she had some body move. It's incredible. It's a terrible case.
So sad.
But that means you can't. But that doesn't mean that as a defense attorney you don't do the best cross you can do. Now maybe for that jury, he feels that he had that jury and sat down. But I think there was a lot more that could be done.
Was there one question you would have asked differently that really would have, you think, brought it home for the jury?
Yes, I would have lined up all the EMS that heard her say Eric, and I would say, are you telling me they didn't hear right? Are you telling me she couldn't say that? I mean, let her. She's got to go one way or the other.
Right. Well, we'll see what the rest of the testimony has in this case. We just heard that the Chambers trial is taking a break. We will continue to monitor that closely with our live feed. We are here to break with any news right here on the network on Law and Crime as soon as we have any information, because this is a trial everyone wants to watch. In the meantime, let's take a look at other top trending crime stories around the country.
Here are today's top crime stories trending on lawandcrime.com and across the country. Investigators now believe the massacre of a family of 8 in Ohio in 2016 was a professional hit. Pike County authorities believe the murder of 8 members of the Roden family was a drug-related crime. One of the victims, Christopher Roden Sr., allegedly oversaw a large-scale marijuana grow operation prior to the killings. Authorities received hundreds of tips in connection with the killings, but have named no suspects. The Dallas police officer accused of entering her neighbor's apartment thinking it was her own and fatally shooting the man was fired by the Dallas Police Department. Officer Amber Renee Geiger reportedly returned home to her Southside Flats apartment after a shift, but entered the wrong apartment. That's when Geiger shot and killed her 26-year-old neighbor, Botham Jean. Geiger was terminated after an internal affairs probe found she engaged in adverse conduct. Geiger now faces a manslaughter charge and was released after posting $300,000 bail. The woman whose violent arrest was captured on camera during Memorial Day weekend on a New Jersey beach was indicted in Cape May County. The woman in the video, 20-year-old Emily Wyman of Philadelphia, was indicted on charges of aggravated assault of a police officer, resisting arrest, throwing bodily fluids, and obstruction for her role in this incident.
That's it.
The arrest was prompted when officers reportedly spotted Wyman with an open alcoholic beverage on the beach, which is not allowed. The officers involved were cleared of wrongdoing after an internal review. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Anthony Velez for Law and Crime.
Thanks, Anthony. You can always count on you to give us these top trending, crazy crime stories. Linda, let's talk about that last one where this woman is on the beach and she's getting arrested, but then she's throwing bodily fluids at officers and the officers punching her.
Right.
What's the takeaway point here? I'm seeing the takeaway point as, we're covering the Van Dyke trial here on the network. We've covered other trials with the police force and excessive force. I think the takeaway point is comply. Stop breaking the law, and when you get caught, just comply.
Even if you're not breaking the law, just comply.
Well, you shouldn't break the law.
Well, you shouldn't. That's it. But the problem is that it's a New Jersey beach town. People are drinking. Everybody knows it. Yes, she shouldn't have done that. But the officers probably shouldn't have hit her back. But things kind of get crazy. But she should have complied, absolutely. But I think what's going to happen on that case is that she'll end up with pretrial intervention. We call that New Jersey.
Right. That's like PTI, we called that in the state of Florida when I was
Yeah,
a
same
prosecutor.
thing,
That's
yeah.
like probation, community service hours. How do you rehabilitate
Right.
for maybe either a withhold in court costs so you don't have a conviction on your record, or drop charges?
That's what
via
it
null
sounds like
costs.
it's going to be, but they're not going to let her get away with punching a cop, even if he did kind of look like from the. And also, it goes to show you how videos. The point, bringing back to Laquan Davis, videos necessarily don't tell you the whole story, because you can have a before and an after.
Right. And another key thing to know is something like that, while might be considered a misdemeanor in under normal circumstances, because we have a public officer here and a police officer, this is an automatic felony charge that she's
Well,
facing for
New
resisting
Jersey
arrest.
only does about 1972. They changed their code to eliminate felonies and misdemeanors. They call it disorderly persons. So they charged her with what was actually called a crime in New Jersey, not a disorderly persons, which is like a misdemeanor in other counties. So
Right.
she is charged with a crime.
Yeah. So not only is it disorderly contact in an open container and drinking underage, it's resisting with violence, it's beating up a police officer. There's more of the video that we have live. Anyway, we have a lot going on here on the network, jam-packed. We're covering many trials, gavel to gavel. The Jessica Chambers trial is our main trial. They are on a quick break. And we are also covering right now, we're going to go to Kesha Myers, which is the victim's friend. Let's take a look.
No. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to take a short recess at this time, just so we bring our wonderful people back to the jury.
All right, for the jury. Okay, we are going to have some more analysis here. Linda, you and I were discussing during the last break something that was almost a revelation for us. It was like an aha moment that I wish we could whisper into the ear of the attorneys in the trial to pound home in a closing argument. So we were listening to the speech pathologist say that it was impossible for her to be able to utter with consonants any kind of words that we could hear. But then you brought up a really good point, and I'm going to let you say that point because it was really good.
Remember that the victim here who's burned is either walking or running, depending on what you read and what people say, down the roadway when she's saying, "Help me." But she's walking or running. To do that, she needs air in her lungs so she can propel, so she can breathe. Or else she wouldn't be able to breathe walking around. She'd be holding her breath. She's not holding her breath.
Right.
When running down the roadway.
She still had breath and life
She
force
still had
to utter
some breath
something.
to utter something at that point.
That is such a good point, and something that I really wish that the attorneys in this case could really listen to. It is such a good point, and I haven't heard that point come up
Well, you and
before.
I just had a revelation. We've been reading all about this and never thought about that either.
No, and it will be fun to see the series on oxygen that we've been teasing here as well on the network, which I'm going to watch this weekend, to see if anything like that is even mentioned. We have to take a quick break. Stick with us. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Law and Crime. I'm Carissa Kranz. We are covering many trials on this network, gavel to gavel, as usual. But our main trial, the one that has really got the audience and the nation into grips, is the Jessica Chambers case, the case of the Mississippi cheerleader who was burnt alive and was seen running and walking like a zombie and uttering words of who could be the defendant's standing trial or someone else. Those are the questions. Those are pictures on the screen. That's the burnt car. Really horrific facts. This is, as we were talking on break, and Linda said to me, she's here with me on set, there are crimes and then there are crimes, and this is one of the horrific ones. Let's take a look at prosecution's opening statements, where the prosecutor is going to lay out their case and what we can expect to hear throughout the stages of this trial. Let's take a look. Linda, let's talk about that for a second with this Bill Cosby case. This is a case that we have, watched on all the networks, and it's, first one was, tried, and then it was tried again, and now here he is in his 80s. Facing possibly the rest of his life in prison. But there are also lots of victims. What do you
Lots
think?
of victims.
Lots.
Well, he's going to get the maximum just on this victim, but that's a real interesting issue.
So you think jail time?
The jail time. The uncharged crimes, because that's a hot topic in law. As you know, Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court nominee,
Right.
it doesn't believe that you should have uncharged crimes making a sentence bigger in the federal system. So this is a perfect place it applies. Isn't this like the two cases come together where you have other women, and there's always other women, aren't there?
Well, they seem to be coming forward. As soon as one comes forward, others feel safe to come forward.
That's right.
It's the whole concept of safety in numbers.
That's right.
So, you know, it's important to also note in this case that Bill Cosby, while he could be facing the rest of his life in prison, he could also be facing house arrest or probation.
That's right.
We really don't know, but I think you're right. Too many people are all hung up on this case.
He committed a sexual assault. I mean,
And-
he drugged somebody to have sex against her. You know, she didn't have any consent. That's, to me, that's 4 years. That should be the max. The 3 years plus the year for the enhancement.
Right, especially with the media attention that this is getting and all the other hype around the Me Too movement, because this one is a poster. We have to take a quick break. Stick with us. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back. I'm Carissa Kranz. Now, that is a powerful defense opening statement. With me, Linda Kenney Baden. Let's talk about this for just a second. I'm listening to her, and she's going much based on what the prosecution feels may be reasonable or may have happened under those circumstances. And then she contrasts that by saying that's what the prosecution's experts are going to say are possible or not possible. Right. But we have eyewitnesses. We have first responders, and they're going to tell you what happened and what was said. Right. That's powerful.
It was a pretty powerful
especially if they can deliver on it, the defense, in their actual case in chief.
And I like her style, Miss Jessica. She's being respectful to the victim, who deserves all the respect. She talked about the prosecutor being Jay, what he said. But yes, she has picked up the walk and talk, something that we mentioned. And if you go back to the reports, which is what I did last night about 3 in the morning, because that's the best way to see what happened, what they said at the time, they have in quotes, Eric did. He set me on fire. Eric did. So she is talking about reasonable doubt here when she's talking about what the first responders did, what they saw, what they heard, and what they wrote within the moments of Jessica last being seen by them.
Okay, so now those are all really good points. The next thing we're going to listen to here is we have some sound bites from the victim's mother of her testimony in court that I want to play because I really want to highlight what she has to say because it really helps with our trial analysis. Let's take a look. Welcome back. I'm Carissa Kranz. That is Lisa Chambers, the victim's mother, and we are listening to the defense cross-examine her, just really breaking it down, trying to find out those final moments, where she was going, the cell phone rang, who could it have been? All of these things that need to be linked together to figure out whether or not we have the right defendant on the stand or standing trial. Right. Linda, I don't want you to go today, but I'm going to have to let you go in a minute. So what are your final thoughts on what we've seen so far with this trial and even the victim's mom on the stand?
How can you cross-examine the victim's mother? But I'd be interested to see a second time who called her, right? Who called Jessica that she went out for? If it's Quentin, it puts him again back with her, and that's a problem for him as a defendant, and the defense knows that also. I mean, we have seen, we basically have seen the case laid out right here today. That's it. I mean, we've seen most, and now we're going to fill in the evidence. Also, who saw her getting all this gas? She got a lot of gas. Who would have known that if you lit the car on fire with some more gas, then it would just go up in flames because she had like 14 gallons or $14 worth of gas in her car? I mean, I'm interested in that too, because whoever saw that, who could see that, who was near that, also has opportunity.
And another thing that I think is important to point out is the defense is asking, oh, her phone rang, do you know who called? And you can bet, but I mean, we'll see what happens when the defense puts on its case in chief, that the defense knows who called at that time. But I guess they're testing the mom to see if the mom has any insight, whether even her daughter would have lied at that point, could have been leading to someone else.
That's right. We're going to fill in all those blanks are hopefully going to be filled in. The prosecutor promised that just jury, they're going to fill in those blanks for that half an hour. So let's see if they do.
All right, Linda, thank you so much for joining us. I love having you here, and you can see her as well as hosting at Law and Crime. We now have a sponsored message from Aaron Keller, a promo on the Jessica Chambers trial.